Here in the Piedmont Triad, we're all connected by the ideas, innovations, and people working to improve our region. From transportation and planning to housing and economic vitality, we bring those conversations to you. Welcome to the Triad Regional Connections podcast, hosted by Audra Adams and Lamar Powell, brought to you by the Piedmont Triad Regional Council.
Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Triad Regional Connection podcast, brought to you by the Piedmont Triad Regional Council. My name's Lamar Powell, and this is my co-host, Audra Adams.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Today, we have a very pertinent subject to talk about, and to do that, we have a special guest. Her name is Christina Peoples. Please welcome her to the table.
Thank you for having me.
And you hear the applause out there. So I've spoken with you before, but we have talked in more of a group setting, so I didn't get to really dive into some of the things. And you looked over my paper earlier and you're like, wow, you really thought about this, because it's such an interesting topic to me, ageism. Mm-hmm. And even saying that word is not something that easily rolls off my tongue, because it's not a part of my vocabulary on the regular. And I think that should change. So why don't you just explain what ageism is in your own way?
Okay. Well, I'll give the general definition. So ageism is basically when you may stereotype, discriminate, or there's prejudice against a person or group of people all because of their age or perceived age. And so you can look at a group of individuals who may have some gray hair, and immediately you feel the need to exclude them or help them because you think, oh, they need me in some type of way. Like, that's an example of what ageism is. It can be really subtle, or it can be really right in your face. And it is something that can affect everybody. So this is a thing that is universally experienced in some type of way, whether people are aware of it or not.
So a lot of times I think when you say the word ageism, you want to naturally think the older population. But as we were talking earlier, that's not the case, right?
That's right. So this can affect a 5-year-old. It can affect a 95-year-old. And that sounds weird because you're like, a 5-year-old, how could it affect them? Well, you think of like children. Sometimes they're not taken seriously, or they may be seen as like not knowing anything, or, really having a space in certain environments. So immediately we can be excluding them from activities, from conversations. So you could see it show up in a 5-year-old. You could see it show up in teenagers, college students who are in their 20s and getting out into the workforce. Yeah. You can see it show up, across the lifespan.
I think that's a good point that you're bringing up, that we just shouldn't say, oh, well, they're not at an age yet that they can see. And then the same goes for our older generation. So let me ask you, why is this so harmful?
Our perceptions, our stereotypes, all the things start very young. There's this book, it's called, I'm forgetting the name, but it's by Dr. Becca Levy, Breaking the Age Code. And in the book, she talks about how as early as like 3 months, we are already like developing some type of bias that young.
At 3 months?
Yeah. Now, if you go read that book and I was wrong, just act like you didn't hear this part, because it's been a while since I read it. But yeah, like that young, you're new to the world and you're already forming some type of bias. So that carries throughout our lives. And if we are already having these like negative thoughts as it relates to aging and, older people or younger people, think about the impact it's going to have on your life, because a lot of times the biases that we have towards others, somewhere in there we have them towards ourselves. So that can have an impact on your quality of life. That can have an impact on your health. Like, how regularly are you going to go to the doctor? Or are you going to look at it like, well, this is just happening because that's what comes up as you get older, and you just dismiss it instead of addressing it, right? It's going to have an impact on the workplace and how we, people of different generations interact with one another. So ageism, it influences so much. And if we continue to not be informed about how it shows up and, how it can really be damaging, then we'll just continuously see this cycle going on and on and on. And we'll see relationships, continue to be challenged. We'll see it impact the economy. Like, we have to be informed about this, and we have to know like the ways to address it to really improve society and improve our own like individual lives.
Okay, so you're here on behalf of Piedmont Triad Regional Council. And what is your role there?
I'm the health promotion coordinator.
Okay. And so this topic, a lot of times, again, I would think that it would apply primarily to the older generation, the older population. And that's probably more so the age group that you're going to apply this to because of your role, because you're in the AAA part of PTRC. So, but really, and that's what I was thinking about, this, your approaches to the older generation, but really we need to start educating much younger. So that's why we're talking about this whole spectrum.
Yeah.
So, and how long have you been with PTRC?
So it'll be 7 years this year. Yeah, this year would make 7 years. But like to what you're saying, like, yeah, we have to start educating younger. And there are some, high schools that are starting to, incorporate education around ageism. There are authors who are writing books for children that, teaches them about ageism or promotes aging in a more positive way. Because you think about like in schools, they have that 100 day of school, and usually they're dressing up as what they perceive older people look like. And it's like, oh, that's cute. But then, like, what are we teaching kids about aging? That everyone has to walk with a cane or a walker or be hard of hearing? Like, you know what I mean? And it really also like highlights that that's just for older people, but there are younger people who may be hard of hearing, or there are younger people who may have some mobility limitations and need certain devices. And with that, like, the older we get, and we may have some changes because we think that this is something that only older people, experience, we might not get that hearing aid that we're in need of. We might not use the cane that our physical therapist and our doctor told us that we should be using to help heal or whatever. So it's ongoing. But like, you made me think about that when you just mentioned what you said.
Yeah. So in your roles, educating.
Yes.
And not just the older population, but everyone.
And how do you go about that? What is your process
with educating people about ageism?
Right, especially within PTRC. How do y'all work this program and then get it out?
So like next month we have 26 senior centers throughout our 12 counties, and so they typically come to PTRC to do quarterly trainings. So we'll be actually talking about ageism and doing some role plays, because you can imagine within the AAA, our demographic is 60 plus.
Okay.
Senior centers, 55 plus, right? But you could imagine ageism more than likely shows up within the people who go to the senior center or the staff. And so, addressing it with the staff and educating the staff on what it is, how it can show up, and how you all can address it could do numbers with the individuals who are coming there and making sure that they're being treated well and that they're not, being coddled or whatever, because so many things, it could show up in so many ways. So we are providing a training for senior centers, and I would imagine we have a long-term care ombudsman program, and we've talked about educating staff at long-term care communities as well. So
you've been there for almost 7 years. Obviously this has been going on before this. I wonder when it was brought to the attention of some organization such as, or the government organization of Ptrc, that this is something that needs to be talked about.
It's a subject that needs to be talked about. It's that important. You want to educate people.
Do you have any idea how long this has been going on, especially at Ptrc?
As far as like government, like agencies, organizations, this has kind of come up within the past few years.
Okay. So that's kind of what I'm...
But ageism, that's existed.
It's always existed.
Yeah. And I mean, in the term that came, it was like in the 80s by Robert Butler. And he's the one who like coined the term. So it's been around for a long time. But I say because of social media, you start to hear it more and more. And then, other, agencies and groups start thinking like, well, hey, like this is something we need to talk about because this could be going on here and we don't want that. So just over the past like few years, because it's become this buzzword, more people are zooming in,
gaining traction. Yes. Okay. It was just, my mind works over here like, okay, I didn't know much about this. Who set this in place to say this needs to be a program, this needs to be an outreach, and thus we need to have continual conversations about that to duplicate this in other counties and all the things that Ptrc has the reach to have and elsewhere as well.
And I would credit gerontologists, which I am one.
I would credit gerontologists. Tell about that too.
Yeah, because gerontologists, for anyone who doesn't know, that's someone who studies aging, right? But like a gerontologist is going to look at the biological piece, the psychological piece, the social piece of like aging, and how as we move through this life course, like how all those things can have an impact on a person and what can be put in place to help enhance that person's aging experience. So there are several gerontologists. One that I can say off the top of my head is Dr. Tracy Gendron, who works at Virginia Commonwealth University. She's written books. She's created like virtual workshops that can educate anybody about ageism and all of that. And so you see a large portion of gerontologists who have just been amplifying the voices of older people, of younger people, and pushing it out there with, they call age equity, and pushing the importance of that and advocating. I would also say like that's really how and why it landed on a lot of AAAs, especially throughout North Carolina.
Okay. So what are some valuable skills that you have seen older people coming into a more younger workforce? What kind of skills and wisdom do you feel like they bring to the table that maybe are missing before they get there?
I would say any skill that, a younger person has, it just looks different. So if it's like a technology type of space, right? There may be some programs that are new that, a person who's older may haven't had the experience with that would have to learn, but they come in already having the background in whatever that technology is, computers, cameras, phones, whatever. They have that knowledge. They have the ability to navigate conversations.
Right.
And sometimes it's like that question is a good question. It can be challenging because it kind of brings about assumption that all older people are wise and all older people are experienced. One would think that over time, you get experience. You have your failures, you have your successes, and you have what you've learned from those things. I would say that's what they bring.
Okay, so say that an older person coming newly back into the workforce of something like technology, and technology has moved past what they know. I think that the training, or maybe, am I right with saying most younger generations these days just assume that they are unteachable in those kinds of things because, they're inept and they're far past what they can catch up to in their own time here. Would that be something? I feel like I've seen that. It's like, oh my God, do I have to walk through this, with them? But the question, I guess, in that is, if the corporations or businesses had more education on that situation, then I think that the gap of that could be closed a little bit better. Does that make sense?
It does. And what you're really touching on is intergenerational relationships. And so the workplace really should be a space that cultivates that helps these different generations grow together. Because with those assumptions, you have that until you get to know the person. So if there are activities put in place or different programs within that workspace that are put in place, then that allows opportunity for these generations to learn from each other and then be like, oh, I had it all wrong. Okay.
Right.
Or wow, you're not as bad as I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
And vice versa, because there is definitely ageism on the older generation too. These younger generations, they don't know. Why am I talking like that?
You started doing the voice.
But I'm loving it.
I did it.
I think it all depends on the individual too. It's an individual thing. I was around before computers came around. The first computer that came out, I had one of them. So, I've learned this whole process. But also, even at my age, sometimes the older I get, I don't feel like, I get stubborn. Don't tell me what to do. But one of the things I've tried to do is learn from anybody. Doesn't matter what the age is, because a younger person can bring something new or different to the table. I can learn. I'm constantly learning from my daughter all the time. And so I think that's a good space to be in, to be willing to and have the ability to learn no matter what a person's age is. Yeah, I like to talk to an older person, because a lot of times we feel like that wisdom is there. But also the young people are wise too. Depends. It depends on the individual. So I think this is it's interesting. So how do we teach people not to act in the bad way with ageism? What are some of the things that you're teaching?
Language is everything. So
what do you mean by that?
Always being language and awareness, right? We say things all the time, and sometimes we're not even aware of what just came out of our mouths. So being aware of what is coming out of our mouths, really being more intentional with how we talk about aging, how we talk about ourselves as we get older.
That's hard.
It is so hard.
It's so hard.
It's so
because you wake up one day and it's just different, and you did not agree to that.
And this is one thing, just thinking about aging, because I talk so much about this, people automatically think that means, well, man, so I can't say anything negative about aging. And that's not what I'm saying, because sometimes it sucks. It is not fun getting older.
Yes.
That's cool. if you feel that way, feel that way. The thing that I'm like kind of zooming in on when it comes to like language and being aware is the more we focus or communicate those negative things, then it's gonna, bring us down. That's gonna have an impact on our self-esteem, on our, our confidence, and then how we start interacting with people.
And
like,
mental health,
yes,
too.
mental health, because it's like you may start to exclude yourself from certain activities or certain groups of people just because you are negatively, like talking to yourself negatively about getting older. And it's so hard because we grieve some of the things we used to be able to do that we're like not able to do anymore. And so it's a natural thing to want to, communicate that. But again, like how you see yourself is also in a lot of ways how you're going to see other people and interact with them.
True.
So like starting with ourselves can then help with how we interact with other people. So in my case, working with older adults, I'm having to be constantly aware of, what am I saying to myself? Because if I see that in another person, in some type of way, that's going to be the treatment. And when you think of agencies that work with older adults, similar to like what you said, where we think that older adults can't learn and they're not able to adapt. When an older person comes and they are seeking help or something, because you already have those negative thoughts about aging and the way you see older people, then you may limit the resources that could benefit that person without even knowing.
Realizing it.
So being aware and, aware of how you're seeing people, aware of what you're thinking, and aware of the way you're communicating could be one way to really challenge ageism.
So the other thing too was just thinking about, I saw somebody yesterday, an older lady in one of the, I don't know, type of home or something. I had to make a delivery there, and I really felt sorry for that one lady. She was in a dark room. Her head was down, and it was just a sad thing to see. And I was just thinking about, how could we make, what could you do to make that person's day better? But the reason I brought that up is a lot of times what we're talking about ageism is not just something individually that we're dealing with, but it's also something on an institutional level. Because even in the medical field, I know recently it's like, we're not going to operate on this person because they're above a certain age, where they may do well in that surgery, just depend on the individual, or an institution just having a bias against the older generation, and that type of thing. So,
isn't there a day set aside in the year?
Yeah.
For this particular cause?
Yeah. So Ageism Awareness Day, it's usually October 9th. So it's a day where, people learn. I mean, there's events, there's different, programs and things that go on that day to educate people about ageism. And like what you just said, Lamar, about how it could show up in the operating room, whether we're gonna, to say that a person's value in life is just based on the number, like if you're 85, we don't need to work, is wild to me. Because, like, I know that we're way more valuable than our chronological age.
Absolutely.
But like you said, it's on a institutional level. This is like a system that has been in place for years. And it would take years to dismantle it. And so thinking about that, then okay, if it could take years to dismantle it, then it's like it goes into an individual thing where now you have to make those choices as a physician, as a nurse, as a teacher, whomever, to be like, okay, well, for me, how I interact with people, is gonna change. Because a system.
Yeah. The system, I mean, even for just the medical system in general. And I think we bring that up because it's very important, especially for the older generations. They were brought up, and I'm middle of that, but we were brought up to say, okay, whatever the doctor says is what we should be doing. And that is not the medical system of this period right now. If you are not educated, you might as well be walking into a lion's den of, you just don't want to put, maybe that's not what needs to go in my vein today. Right. And, just different things like that. And I have experienced, as I guess it is ageism, of really, really advanced things that you would see in older people, but they're showing up in me, and they are dismissed because I'm not old enough to have been experiencing that. And so then it makes you feel, or I feel as a patient, well, that's not then what could possibly be happening to me. And so also there's no remedy. So there is also no relief from all of those things. And so that only grows as, I wish there was enough of us that could just sit at the hospital and walk in with every single person with, having some medical background, and just sit down at their doctor's appointment and go, why this, why that, explain this, explain that. So that gets me a little fired up on that kind of front right there.
Well, I mean, what like you're touching on, and you touched on it too, Lamar, we're really unique.
Yeah.
And I think that when it comes to healthcare, sometimes it feels like there's a template and everything has to match this template. But it's like, no, each case, each person is different. But when it comes to ageism, that, that we often are bringing with us and not knowing about it, it looks at any and everybody and thinks that it should all be the same.
Yeah. I'm just going to turn my phone and just have the top of it say ageism. So every time I turn it on, it's like, this is what I'll live in. And I'll speak that into myself, which I love that analogy, not analogy, it's just the truth that what you do speak over yourself is ultimately what comes to pass a lot of times. It's what it is.
It's sort of that really is a cultural thing too. So we got to get beyond that. But I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Is there anything else you want to add about this subject today?
There's so many things. I think I just want to remind people, that the different things that we encounter as we're getting older, all the things that we experience, some negative, some positive, right? But even in all of that, like, you are valuable. I think that as we navigate life and we see that number climb, right? We get in our 20s, we're like, this is cool. 30s, we're like, all right now. Like 40s, 50s, we're like, hey, what's happening? Because we see that number climb, we see our bodies change, and we start questioning ourselves and kind of beating down on ourselves. And so I just want to remind everyone to, like, give yourself grace as you're getting older. You won't always get it right. Even with the education I have with ageism, I can still be ageist, right? The biggest thing is being aware of it, giving ourselves grace, and just remembering that we are all valuable no matter the age that we are.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today.
And you're welcome back to this table at any time.
I'll come back.
All right. So the best way to find out more about this, I know, to go to ptrc.org. Yeah. And I know AAA's got a part of that, the aging department. Any other links, maybe?
Yeah, there's the American Society on Aging that has information to educate people about ageism. There's also Reframing Aging, very knowledgeable and very helpful, especially for area agencies on aging. And then North Carolina has the all ages, all stages. And there's a lot of information on their site about this as well.
And I know you have some social media stuff.
I've
looked at it and I love it. I think it's
you.
really cool. I aim to educate and inspire action around the aging experience.
Yes.
So we appreciate you, Christina.
Thank y'all for having me and for talking about this.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see you on the next episode. Y'all have a great day.